Hello, how are you? This class that we are going to have today is about valency patterns with transitive and intransitive verbs. A valency pattern is the pattern of the words in a sentence. These are all formed around the verb, which is the most important clause element in a sentence. Yes, you have different kinds of clause elements, such as the direct object and indirect object, the subject predicatives. They all go around the verb. They can all have optional adverbials also. We are going to see there are 5 major valency patterns. The first one that you have is an intransitive pattern. In an intransitive pattern, you have the subject and the verb. You don't need anything else because there alone you have a full sentence. If you say more people came or the train arrived, there you have an intransitive verb because you have nothing else apart from that. If you have a monotransitive pattern, you have a subject, a verb, and a direct object. The direct objects are usually noun phrases, and they always answer to the question of what. Yes. So if you have the subject is the old woman, and then you have the verb, which is carried, a heavy load of firewood, and you ask, what did the old woman carry? She carried a heavy load of firewood. So that then would be your direct object. That is a monotransitive pattern because it has only one object. In a detransitive pattern, you can have 2 objects. You have a direct object and an indirect object. The indirect object usually comes after the verb, and it answers to the question of who, or for who, or to who, depending on the form that you have in the sentence. And you also have a direct object. So if in this example you say, I gave the man a plate of food, and you ask, who did you give it to? You gave it to the man. That would be your indirect object. What did you give him? You gave him a plate of food. That plate of food would be the direct object, which is also going to answer to the question of what. The direct objects occur very often, and you have detransitive patterns where you have an indirect object and a direct object also occur often. You are never going to have a sentence with only an indirect object. If you have an indirect object, you must have a direct object. The other kind of valency patterns that we have are the complex transitive. These are a bit more complicated, and they always come after certain verbs. Yes, not any verb can take is a complex transitive. You have this valency pattern occurs with 2 different patterns. One with the verbs, for example, declare, choose, make, call, and there you have a subject, a verb, a direct object, and an object predicative, which is telling you something about the direct object. And there you have, for example, if you say, his family called him Johnny, you have, his family is the subject, called is the verb, him is the direct object, who did they call, and the object predicative is Johnny, because it is telling you something about the direct object. Yes? Okay. If you have the children named the dog Rover, and there you have the dog would be the direct object, and the object predicative is Rover, and that is telling you something about the dog, yes, which was the direct object. The other form that you can have is with a noun, phrase, or adjective. Or you can have an obligatory adverbial. And this also goes with very few verbs. You don't often have a verb where you need an obligatory adverbial. But here, for example, if I say he put his hand on her shoulder, the direct object would be his hand. The verb is put, and if you use the verb put, you need to know where he put his hand, yes? And here the obligatory adverbial would be on her shoulders. If you say she laid the baby on the blanket, and here she laid would be the subject, the verb, and then you have the direct object, which is the baby, but you must know where she laid the baby, yes? Because if you don't have an obligatory adverbial that tells you on the blanket, in the basket, on the floor, you will never know where she laid the baby. Okay, the next form of the valency pattern is a copular or linking verbs. These verbs like be is the most important linking verb that you have. And here you have verbs like appear, feel, keep, look, remain. There you have a list of verbs that are copular or linking. And they have two valency patterns. One is the subject verb and the subject predicative, which can be an adjective, or it can be a noun phrase, but you need something after that. You have Kate, for example, is the subject, felt is a copular verb, and a bit braver, which is an adjective phrase, would be the subject predicative. You also have some copular verbs that need an obligatory adverbial, the same as the other ones. You need an obligatory adverbial, especially with the verb lives. If you say Mark lives, you need to know where he lives, and so Mark lives in Spain. If I say your toast is on the table, I need on the table, because if not, I will never know where your toast is. If I say your food is in the oven would be an obligatory adverbial, and there you know where it is. If not, if I say your food is, and you will never know where it is. Up to now, I hope this is clear. Look at the examples that you have, and then there are variations on transitive patterns. Monotransitive, detransitive, and complex transitive patterns all require some type of object. The most common structure for the object is a noun phrase. These noun phrases are subordinated. So later on, when we see subordination, we will see how you are going to use the noun phrases in these cases. If you have a monotransitive pattern, with a noun clause as a direct object, you have the example. He said, what did he say? He said he was going to make a copy. He was going to make a copy would be the clause that is your noun clause functioning here as a direct object. The detransitive patterns you can also have with a prepositional phrase, which you can put at the end, and here you will need to or for, because if you say he gave a beautiful present to his sister, there you have a beautiful present would be the direct object, and to his sister would be the indirect object. You can also have for if you have, for example, he bought a book for his mother, and there you would have for his mother is the indirect object, and the book would be the direct object. In the detransitive patterns, you can have a noun phrase for the indirect object and a noun clause for the direct object. Remember always that a noun phrase is just a phrase, whereas a clause always has a subject and a verb. So, if you say, the headmaster told the students they hadn't passed the exam, who did he tell? The students would be the indirect object. And what did he tell them? They hadn't passed the exam. That would be your direct object. Verbs in all the patterns, intransitive and transitive, can have optional adverbials. Remember then that you have some where you need an obligatory adverbial, and here you have optional adverbials, where you have the children played happily in the garden, and happily is an adverb that tells you how they played, how they felt. And in the garden is an adverbial that is a prepositional phrase, and it is telling you where they played. In the next one, it snowed heavily all the morning, and heavily is an adverb. Heavily is an adverb, and it tells you how it snowed. And all morning is a a noun phrase, which is telling you, it is functioning as an adverbial there, and it is telling you when it snowed. If you have in the next one, they are all the same here. You have different kinds of examples about they ate the meat slowly last night, and slowly would be an adverb of manner telling you how they ate, and last night would be the adverb of time. It is a noun phrase which is telling you when they ate. Okay, I hope this has been useful. Here you have some examples of most verbs allow more than one valency pattern. Yes, depending on the context, also you can have different verbs that are functioning as linking verbs or as transitive verbs. For example, if I say the soup tasted awful, and there you have a verb that is linking, because awful is an adjective phrase, and you are going to, and it is telling you what the soup tasted like. Now, if I say the chef tasted the soup, there tasted would become a transitive verb, because the soup would be a direct object. What did the chef taste? He tasted the soup. So then, there you can see that you can have different verbs acting as either as a copular or linking or transitive verbs. Okay. For now, there is no more to say about this. I want you to read all your notes and see if you don't understand anything. Please send me a note on the platform and tell me whether you understood or you didn't, or if you have any doubts at all, please let me know. Yes, there I sent you some exercises for you to do. Try and do them. You have the answers, so there you will be able to see whether you understood this or not. Okay, for now then, that is all, and we'll keep in touch. I'll keep in touch with you, and I hope you keep in touch with me. Okay.